And we're back with another edition of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Pop Culture Cosmos, the Lakers Fast Break, Inside Sports Fantasy Football on Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows. And if you can, please give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe. I can't even say subscribe, but it'll sound so much better in post.
I think you just emphasize subscribe.
Subscribe. Yeah, absolutely. Subscribe like you will the awesome YouTube channel, Viseland. It is truly appreciated. I've got the after effects right now. I'm kind of like, the emotion's gone. You've had that high and you're just like the will has just sapped out of your body because, you just got over such excitement, such emotional high. And we're now in the days after where we have to go ahead and regroup for the upcoming season, plus everything that's going on. And who better to break down everything that's going to go on in this offseason, plus his thoughts on the world title for the Lakers themselves, is a good man indeed. You got to go ahead and just not only follow him on Twitter at NBA Draft Mikey V, but also as well catch him and his brother Jason each and every time out on the awesome Viseland channel. That's Viseland. Subscribe. See, it's headed there right there to that time.
Subscribe, 5-star reviews, appreciate as well.
Exactly, because you're on also, you do that 5-star review because you're on every podcast outlet as well. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
absolutely.
As many as we can get on.
Well, I watch your shows on YouTube, so there you go.
Yeah,
I got to go ahead.
The mainstay so far. We just have a really good time with it. My brother and I have been talking basketball for all of our lives, and as soon as he was able to talk, I'm slightly older, but yeah, we have had a really good time with it. And then we had a great time watching the NBA playoffs. And I, for one, being a LeBron James fan, was ecstatic that he won his 4th NBA title. I also want to give out another shout out to a different podcast that I was just on. It's called It's About Joy. And it was done by our friend, Gerald and I. We did a mock draft with this person. He goes by PD Webb. And on Twitter, he is at Above the Break 3. And I just love the podcast format. It's he talks to people just about players that bring them joy. And mine was LeBron James. And I find that to be very topical right now as well. So episode 2 of It's About Joy just came out. That's on Spotify and Stitcher. And if you go and check PD's Twitter or Patreon, he should have it on there as well.
Well, absolutely. And once again, I'm on with Michael Visenberg. You got to catch his show as well, Viseland, wherever you get your podcasts, and also as well his YouTube channel. And subscribe there today because there's some great conversations that go on between him and his brother. Sometimes a little bit of an argument comes in there. Yeah, just a little bit.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, that's what you're hoping for, indeed. But still, there's some great times when you go ahead and check out. Exactly, the drama between brothers. Only brothers can have these kind of arguments.
Exactly.
But you can.
I think only brothers, or let's just say siblings.
There you go, siblings. There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Because my sister and I could probably have that kind of argument.
Exactly. Hey, I would watch you and your sister argue about anything. So.
I remember a time when we were going ahead and we were kids and we were upstairs fighting for something or candy or something, but we're end up doing the whole hair thing. You let go. No, you let go. No, you let go. No, you let go. No, you let go. Dad, Mom, Dad.
Well, Jason and I will get into some of those because we have a history there too.
Mom, Dad.
Oh, yeah.
Then we blame each other. And there
exactly.
That's exactly how it works. Yeah. But it is Michael Visenberg. Please, it's just such a great having you. It's such a great time having you on the show. You've been so awesome before. And I know you're deep inside with perspective insight as far as not only looking at the draft prospects coming down the road, but what's coming up here this year. Mm-hmm. But before we get into all that, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on basically, your thoughts as far as from a LeBron James standpoint. You said you were on that show because he brings you joy.
Yes.
And to see the kind of joy that he has, I know everybody's just at this point in time reflecting on the performance. Where does it rank? Where does it stand? In fact, your show ranks all 10 of his NBA Finals performances and as far as where they rank or whatnot. But just watching this one now, what were your thoughts?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. Like, obviously, from an efficiency standpoint, he had, I felt a few halves where he struggled. And then there were the 2 games where he had the heavy turnover numbers. But eventually, like, just the couple, I think it was game 2 where he had like no turnovers.
Yeah.
And then
10 assists, no turnovers, I think it was.
Yeah, it was something along those lines. His work on the boards, his defensive rotations, I thought were very good. I know that it was very switch heavy, and at times, you kind of wondered why he didn't stay with Jimmy or didn't stay with somebody and just kind of switched during a pick and roll situation. But yeah, I just think that was also part of the Lakers' defensive scheme.
I want to say this in regards to his defense. Even though obviously the defense carried the Lakers in the series, LeBron didn't have as much of that, I'm going to I'll take this upon myself like he did with Murray in the previous round or like he did with Harden. He didn't have that. He tried to go ahead and take on Butler at times. He tried to go ahead and take on certain players at times. Like he totally wiped out a couple of the younger players that were on the team. Whenever he was on Hero or whatever he was on.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, forget that, as we saw.
And like even like if LeBron gets switched on to like a Duncan Robinson and everything, that is going
they were feared. They were just scared. You could see they were scared. But he wasn't as effective on Jimmy Butler as like we say. He when he was all over Murray, it was all over for Murray. When he was all over for, in the Houston round, same thing. And Portland, when he geared up for that 5 to 10 minute stretch, I was all over. It was AD on the other end at this time around going on Butler to help slow him down, to have those off games. And with LeBron, he was just coordinating everything else. He seemed like he was orchestrating everything else. His brilliance as far as being able to go ahead and say, you know what, AD, you've got this. I've got everything else.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely correct there. And I just felt like also like with LeBron basically guarding Bam at a majority of the time as well. Like it was almost preparing for maybe like a switch on a pick and roll with Bam and Jimmy that just didn't really happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, I felt like, just the way that they played it, obviously they played it really well. One thing I will say, I felt like they started most of the games pretty slowly.
Yes.
And I thought in game 6, when they finally went with the 3 guards, LeBron and Anthony Davis, moving Caruso into the starting lineup and eliminating Dwight Howard completely. I thought that was the right move. Like I was kind of waiting for them to do it sooner. I thought in game 4,
Mark Jackson didn't, but I know that was.
Well, I very much disagree with many of his methods. So it's totally fine that he.
Maybe that's why he's not a coach right now. So
hey, you said it.
I don't know.
You said it. I agree with it. But
it doesn't help his interview status when he goes on the air and says, having Alex Caruso, that there was a wrong choice as a starter, and then the Lakers go on a historic run right there in the first half. So
well, like it's just you have to go by the matchup at times as well, and like for instance, okay, we'll bring Mark Jackson into it. Steve Kerr adjusted his matchups in the 2015 NBA Finals, and that created something that was called the death lineup.
Yeah.
So like, you have to sometimes get a little creative, and in terms of like it being, kind of geared towards small ball, you have somebody in the Anthony Davis who may not like playing center, but is best playing center.
Yeah.
And then he is a center. Like, he is a center. He can play other positions as well. He can play alongside a big, much like, like a Tim Duncan or anything like that. Like, to me, it's always funny when they call Tim Duncan the best power forward of all time, because on any other team, he would have just been a center like the entire time.
Yeah.
It was just completely circumstantial. And then eventually when they win their last championship, like Timmy was the center. And they had Boris Diaw like saying he was the center, but like Boris is a 4. Like they're both 4 or 5, can kind of play either position. But yeah, Having Anthony Davis, I think, gives you that level of versatility. So that's huge. The fact, like, defensive versatility, the fact that he was shooting at ridiculous level from mid-range and had improved as a three-point shooter as well. My God, like in the playoffs, he went to a whole nother level on mid-range though, which was always like something that made him really enticing and made him this crazy efficient player. And like the offensive force that he is, and I think will be moving forward. But yeah, he got to a very high level there. And he was the one who really made like the defense run also. But I just think LeBron is just an absolute maestro on the offensive end and was a huge part of the Lakers being the offensive team that they were, especially after there were like some fears of them getting off to the slow start in the bubble, and people saying, oh, they have like the lowest offensive rating in the bubble, and
they were shooting awful from 3-point area.
Oh yeah.
Still going to be an issue.
There were still a few games where they did, they weren't necessarily the most consistent team as far as shooting from long range. Rondo got off to like through the first 11 games of the playoffs, like he got off to this insane start there, and then he kind of went off in a few games, but then that last game he's back to his normal self. I felt like through the Heat series, I guess KCP was the third leading scorer, but Rondo was like in the games that they won, probably their third best player, which was very surprising to me. But
you and I both. I had to board the playoff Rondo train at the very last moment, and I'm glad.
Yeah. As you should, man. Like he made me a believer in the playoffs. Like just the fact that he wasn't afraid to shoot and was actually shooting pretty well. I still think Danny Green is a guy who you can at least have him out there, even with him not shooting very well, because of his defense, his experience, like the fact that he's rarely going to make the wrong play. I liked what KCP did, like especially in Game 4 when he was switched on to Duncan Robinson, or Duncan Robinson was switched on to him, and going right at him, shooting pretty well. Like he had been, I guess, their most consistent like volume shooter this year.
Well, you could see what that was a key where Duncan Robinson and Hero, they were targeting because they're slight builds.
Yeah. And that's the playoffs.
Yeah,
you target these mismatches, and like that's absolutely what they should do. In Game 5, they just seemed to, for whatever reason, they weren't as sharp defensively, just in general. And then you just had these moments like where Danny Green's like looking off Duncan Robinson, and then KCP looks off of him for a second and runs into Caruso on the screen, and like Caruso kind of sets the pick for Duncan Robinson, and that's where Duncan Robinson went off. But I thought, I was hoping, at least for the Lakers' sake, that they would do a good job on their shooters, and I think for the most part they did. Yeah. I feel like they really held Hero in check, especially after he had this fantastic series against Boston. They did as well on Duncan Robinson as I think they could have done in, I would say, 4 out of the 6 games.
Yes.
And it was a real team effort, but obviously a huge driving force being the combination of LeBron James and Anthony Davis, which I think proved to be the best duo in the NBA by a pretty good margin.
I agree. I mean, that's what I was hanging my hat on when people asked me from the beginning of the season, where did I think the team would end up? I did not think during the regular season that they would end up so strong. I thought they would gradually get into it. I thought LeBron would, turn it on eventually. He turned it on from the very beginning, especially on the defensive end, because he got that challenge from AD. That's something I wasn't expecting. Now, mind you, I picked them to win the title, as many people did, because of the fact at the end you had LeBron and AD, and that was going to take them all the way. But I did not think that they would do so well during the regular season. That's where I was kind of surprised that they would stay in tune, because you've seen Laker teams over the years, they just, they magically turn it on at any given point because you figure they have enough veterans to do so. But they not only persevered during the regular season through such a tough season, but like you said, after they did it in the bubble. They just turned it off in the bubble in the beginning, but once the playoffs started, they really turned it on, and that was great to see.
Yeah. Like after that first game against Portland, I think people were rightfully like a little
Charles
worried.
Barkley had them written off.
Yeah. and that's another thing. Like people looking to Charles Barkley for their basketball opinions are usually going to be disappointed.
Twitter is, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Well, Charles is a very entertaining guy.
Yes.
But I also feel like some of his outlook on the game is maybe a tad misguided and maybe like slightly outdated at this point, just in some of his opinions. But he, it was funny because, then that first game against Denver, he comes out with the broom and starts like sweeping the studio and everything. And that one goes to 5. The thing with the Lakers is the inconsistent shooting.
Yeah.
And then also the games where they just kind of came out flat, maybe were making mistakes, like the high turnover games, like game 3, for instance, like they just had a dreadful start to that game in like the first half. And that was just them making tons of mistakes. And, but yeah, I knew they weren't this like juggernaut team because they had the potential to have these like really off shooting nights. So I didn't think they would sweep the Heat, even though they, in those first 2 games, and then with all of the injuries that came to Miami's, 2 of Miami's best players, and Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic, I still was kind of I never felt like just free of Miami possibly looming there and coming back. They were a scrappy team. Yes. They were a scrappy team. Bam came back, didn't have the best first game back, but was still like he was still a presence, and still played defense, still was finishing around the hoop, still a tremendous passer. And then in game 6, when you heard Goran was back, you're like, oh man, like maybe they can get that extra kick off the bench as well. And it just, I think his plantar fasciitis seriously affected him. And I knew he wasn't going to come back and be like his normal self, and throughout most of the playoffs leading them in scoring. But yeah, it was really like, I felt the injuries were just really unfortunate because I always want to see both teams at full strength. But yeah, the Lakers did what they had to do, and I credit Frank Vogel like making the necessary adjustments and shortening their lineup as well. Like I think in game 5 they probably just played too many guys, whereas Miami really shortened their lineup. They went to the 7 guys. Jimmy was dead, but he has like endless energy, and like you knew he was going to come back the next game and still at least be attacking and be aggressive.
But that game performance in game 5.
Yeah.
But that performance in game 5 ultimately is the reason why game 6 was so bad for them, because he had no energy left.
I think that could have been part of it. I was wondering how LeBron would look after he had this tremendous game 5 and came out still very aggressive and looking very good. So yeah, you always wonder, because I'm guessing you thought this as well, but I felt like Kobe Bryant was indestructible. I never you just know that one day it's not going to be the same anymore.
Well, Raphael, I will tell you this, Raphael Barlow from the NBA Draft Junkies, who is my co-host during our NBA playoff run, he had already said on several times that he thinks LeBron is a cyborg. But all kidding aside, and we think he's still 25. So, honestly, but be that as the case, all kidding aside, you're right. With Kobe, we think he's indestructible. And look what happened there, as far as not only his Achilles, but obviously his ultimate, passing and whatnot. But I'm glad that they were able to honor him. With LeBron, the same thing. You're also thinking that the guy, okay, you see him on the floor, his ankle might be looking like it's going in a different direction, but he just goes ahead, fixes it, and there you go. He's going to go ahead on with the free throws. And then,
Gosh, yeah.
So
that was against Houston, right? Where I was kind of worried about him there. Yeah.
But there were several times where he gets hurt and he gets right back up. It's when he got hurt last year at Golden State on Christmas that you thought, okay, really? What happened? And it was just it was very surprising to see him out. But going forward, my friend, I wanted to ask you this.
Yes.
I mean, if you're right in there in the war room with the Lakers, you're telling Jeannie Buss and you're advising Rob Pelinka on how the Lakers should go about doing things. I will say and be honest, unlike Laker Tom with Lakerholics.com, who's on my show frequently and is the guy who sees things maybe through a little bit rosy eyes.
Glasses.
The Lakers did not have the best supporting cast. They have a cast, I should say, that was geared towards defense.
Yeah.
So that's what the best way you can say it. Is there any way that you can seek out players or maybe changes that will still keep the defense at that level where they can turn it on and be a top defense, yet maybe refine some of the things, maybe a little bit better playmaking to assist Rondo, who, as you know, just seems to coast throughout the season and then turns it up in the playoffs, or maybe getting some needed outside shooting?
Yeah, well, I think there are definitely some players available at the 28th spot in the draft that I think could possibly come in. One guy I think, as far as not necessarily like outside shooting, but a guy who I think at least showed a couple flashes when he had a chance to play, Talen Horton-Tucker is a guy that I was high on going into the draft last year. And I really liked the Lakers getting him mid-second round. He's a guy that has that frame. So at least defensively, you have some hope with him. And then also for like his slashing, he has some ball skills, and he's got like the freakiest basketball body. He's like 6'2.5" without shoes with a 7'1" wingspan. So he has like a plus 10.5 wingspan. He's built like an absolute tank. He's the second youngest player ever to win an NBA championship now. Not that he played very much in the playoffs, but he had a few moments where he got to go in and play a little bit, and
especially in that Houston series.
Yeah. That was cool, and like he looked pretty good. So I think that's a guy that you're just hoping makes a little bit of a upward trajectory in that next year. But yeah, I think you have to look for guys like, just with the way that the cap is and that situation, you need to try and look for some veterans that want to play for the minimum or are willing to play for less. And then they have a lot of guys that were on 1 year like player option deals, and I'm guessing most of them will come back. I'm wondering what they do just as far as like, I don't know if you can trade for like a third star, but you could probably at least ship some guys and get like a third player who is all right. And I think maybe that's what they'll do. Was something off with Danny Green? Because I just feel like he wasn't his normal self this year.
Well, he had stated that he had some issues, obviously what's going on with the racial injustice that's going on in the protests and things of that nature. I know that affected him personally. I know also the death threats that came after Game 5, which is extremely inappropriate and unnecessary, unneeded. And I think that's going to stay with him, even though he's basking in the glow of a championship. I think he is going to be looking at.
I also thought what they did to Kyle Kuzma, like that, like petition,
absolutely
mean.
Yes.
Like that's not funny. Like I just don't understand why people would do that.
Now, mind you, both of them, Danny Green has a $15 million option coming up that he's going to pick up, and then with Kuzma. He
last year of his rookie deal. So
he is unfortunately though didn't play at the level that I know a lot of people had hoped. Obviously, the petition, speaks to that.
The thing with him is he needs the ball a lot.
Yeah,
and he can get buckets, and he was really good like playing off of the ball and on cuts and close to the basket. but he needs the ball, and
he did improve his defense substantially.
His defense did get better. I will say he jumped a lot on shot fakes on stuff like that.
That's still
that was
as Twitter
there
knows.
were a few of those where I was like, stay down, man, just stay down. But yeah, he does have some defensive versatility. I wonder the market for him right now, like, because you kind of wonder because whoever is picking him up is probably trying to pay or thinking they're going to pay him for an extension. I doubt he takes his 5th year player option or anything to become like unrestricted. I'm guessing he wants a long-term deal. I don't know if the Lakers are going to be that team that gives him the long-term deal. I agree with you. I wouldn't think so. But so he could be a trade chip. The thing is, like, you wonder if you get back what you're trading with him. Like that's the real key. And even with Danny. So let's say you trade, because I know the guy that is kind of been brought up. People talk about Miles Turner, who I don't know if he's a really great fit with the team, especially in the playoffs.
Fits a mold that a lot of other teams want because they see him not as a Anthony Davis, but maybe like an Anthony Davis light, so to speak.
And like, you don't want that next to Anthony Davis. You just want Anthony Davis.
Yeah, just imagine him on, let's say, Golden State, for example. I
don't love it. I really don't love that.
Really?
And
maybe because of Draymond being there.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of it, and just like the cap situation, and like I think at times he could be somebody who gets run off the floor, like truly. I just don't know if I love that fit. And he still has I think like another couple years after this year where he's getting paid $18 million a year. I'm really not sure about that fit with Golden State either. And then with Victor, I know Victor Oladipo is a name that gets brought up.
Yeah, good luck
last year of his deal.
Yeah,
and like no way that he would re-sign with the Lakers. So it would be like a 1-year thing, and then he came back and was like a fraction of himself. You just don't know if you're getting the same Victor Oladipo that you're really expecting. So I think those are both kind of scary propositions to me. I know the Indiana guys are guys that have kind of gotten thrown around as in terms of them being rumored to be on the trading block, but I don't know if I would be interested in either of them for the Lakers. I'm really not sure who like that third guy, like magic third guy, is at this point.
At least with what the Lakers have as far as assets, I'm not really sure that they can go ahead and get who they want. I mean, for everybody out there that they would want, a team could come in and give them a better deal. They have more or better assets depending on the teams. That they could get. Let's say it is a player that you want, that you think would be a great fit for the Lakers. Somebody could come in like a Boston, like a Miami, like somebody, even a Golden State could come in and make a better deal, make a better offer than what the Lakers have, just because they have more in the coffer going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Though they did also say that about Anthony Davis trades, and looked like that worked out. So, but I think getting Anthony Davis was the huge thing there, and I think as long as they have those two guys. Now, what is Anthony Davis going to do? Like that's to me, that's the big question. I think he's obviously turned down his player option for next year, and I would be absolutely floored if he decided to leave the Lakers this summer or anything like that. That's just, to me, 99.9% chance of that not happening. But I wouldn't be surprised if he signs a really short extension with player options with the Lakers for maybe 2 or 3 years. Is that what you were thinking as well?
Or I was thinking like you said, just that it's sign pseudo 5-year deal. You can leave after 2 that we're seeing, that LeBron signed, and that pretty much every star NBA player, it's basically like the I can get out when I want type deal.
Yeah.
If I don't see things going my way, I can get out and bail out when I want to type deal. So I agree with you. I think that that's going to be something that is going to be signed. Yeah, it'll look like a 5-year deal on the surface, but he'll be able to renegotiate after 2 or be able to be a free agent after 2. So it's really
like Kawhi's deal looks like a 4-year deal, and it's like a 2-year deal. So
same thing with PG, same thing with LeBron. Yeah, you're going to see the same thing.
I have no problem with empowering players, man.
I want to ask you this because this has been a big thing, because we're going back and forth on this, me and several other people. Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yes.
Does he take the deal? Does he take the Supermax? I say he does, but some others have said no. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think.
Oh, you think he takes less to kind of?
No, I think he takes the Supermax. I think because Milwaukee's going to offer him the Supermax.
Yeah,
I think he's going to take the Supermax
from Milwaukee.
From Milwaukee, but I still think if worse comes to worse and he doesn't like what's going on with Milwaukee, he can always get out. You've seen that now. Where people,
he could ask for a sign and trade.
Yeah.
He could do something like that. I think there's a really good chance he leaves, but whatever contract he gets next, I think is going to be long term. But I have a hard time seeing him staying in Milwaukee.
I don't say necessarily he's going to stay in Milwaukee. I just know he's going to sign the Supermax.
Yeah. So, I don't know why he wouldn't.
So you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah, unless he wants to do something to make the salary cap like a little better for signing other players. Yeah, and kind of like what LeBron, Chris Bosh did by taking like a little less money, and so Miami had a little bit more wiggle room to sign some guys. I could see Giannis doing that, because did Giannis even like take he took like the max, but he didn't take I even think like the full max to the point where he could have, like, even during his second contract. So I think he's a guy that really wants to win as well. And I have no idea where he's going to go. I know Toronto has been very interested. I know that Miami is very interested.
Dallas has been talking about it.
Dallas is apparently at the front of the line, and Giannis and Luka would be a fantastic duo. I'm very excited to see what he does. But is he going to take as much money as he possibly can? I think he should, and I think that should be kind of his outlook on things, along with obviously trying to get the most out of his prime.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend, being the second Antetokounmpo to go after a championship ring.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed.
And they're possibly having the third if they do it in Milwaukee.
Yes, that's true. That's true, because there's two Antetokounmpos there.
Yes, Thanasis, his older brother.
Yes, that's true.
And then you have Alex playing in Greece next year too. His youngest brother.
So Kostas right now has the bragging rights.
Does have the ring. I saw him as soon as I saw him walking out with the Greek and Nigerian flag. I was like, oh my god. Well, the other funny meme was everybody was thinking it was going to be Leonard versus Antetokounmpo in the finals, but they didn't think it was going to be Myers Leonard versus Kostas and Antetokounmpo.
Oh, that's too funny. Yes, indeed. Once again, I'm on with Michael Visenberg. You got to catch his show, Viseland, each and every time out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, you can go ahead and follow what he does at Perspective Insight. So you got to go ahead and check him out there. So I want to ask you about your time and your work. You said you've got a lot of things on the queue coming up for you, but also I want to ask you this, your time in following basketball this season and how it's been different, because not only because you're following basketball, but also your work and what you do and looking at these prospects, working hard to go ahead and finding out who is on the cusp of being of interest out there for NBA teams. So I want to hear your thoughts on how it's all been different over the summer.
You definitely don't get as many like rumors or anything out there. Like it's always great. The guys that I really love are the local beat guys. I think you get the best info out of those guys, and of course agents and everything like that. But it's just been so different. You don't have like the Impact Basketball Academy like in its full force. You don't have things along those lines. The NBA Combine was very different, and you're not getting the measurements you normally would get, so you don't get like the rumors from that. Yeah, it's been a very different year, and we had discussed even before, where how do you make changes on your big board and everything like that. I haven't made a ton, it's really hard to know what's going on, and you haven't even heard like very many rumors about where guys are going or anything like that. You hear occasional like you hear Minnesota might want to trade down, you hear New York might want to trade down. Everybody wants to trade down this year. And, Minnesota, I'm sure, wants a 2021 pick too. They trade theirs to Golden State. So yeah, it's very different, and like just not having the ability to necessarily be comfortable having like the group workouts that you normally would. So yeah, hearing that Kai Bowman's killing everybody in workouts last year, like that's those are the fun things you hear about, and like hearing that Thon Maker has this great workout for Milwaukee, and then and somebody tanked their workout for such and such a team. Like, yeah, it's it's this whole year is so weird, man.
It is, but the league is going to be setting up something very soon for these prospects, even though it's going to be somewhat limited in scope and detail as far as
like the combine's been going on,
yeah,
but it's just so weird and different, and like you don't get like the same release of measurements as you normally would.
And that's going to be an issue, I think, going forward.
Yeah,
and then still
the important thing is the medicals. I think that's the really important thing.
Well, you and I have discussed this before, how important the medicals are. I think that's the most important thing, and I think that should be something in the next collective bargaining agreement that should be discussed is the medicals for each and every team. Although you said, and rightly so, I think that is the power of the agents, that can control and sway things towards one or the other. It's not fair, but again, when you're talking about these teams investing millions of dollars on these kids, you want to know everything. You don't want to go ahead and have to take a guess. Or actually, you are taking a guess. You're taking the best educated guess you can. But in order to do so, you got to have all the facts. And you don't want to go ahead and just draft in the dark and say, okay, I think this guy's going to be good. You want to have reasonable assurance that you can go ahead and get this guy on the best platform possible.
Yeah. Like there were guys last year, though, who I will say, like, teams got medical on and were flagged, and they still went pretty high in the draft.
Yeah.
Like it happens, like, with Denver taking, I don't know if Michael Porter was flagged. I'm guessing he was, but they took the risk, and it looks like it. If you have the level of Michael Porter in the bubble and playoffs, for like 2 or 3 years, that's an absolute steal at 14.
Yeah.
So yeah,
he looks like he's going to become a star if he does make some little tweaks in his game, shores up his defense, things like that.
Offensively, he's already a star.
Yeah,
like, that guy can shoot the hell out of the ball, great around the basket. Yeah, he's scoring from every level, man. Yeah,
he's got all the tricks right there already. He destroyed Kuzma.
Yeah,
every single time now.
Oh, geez, like he's so bouncy too. Like he's not the best lateral athlete, but vertically he's always been crazy. And that was one of the reasons why he was such a highly regarded prospect. And like the thing with him that I always remembered was like Bagley does this too. Like they both get their like head around the rim when they rebound. And that was something that he did pretty consistently for Denver. And yeah, like I think his defense was indeed a huge issue at times, and like played him off the court.
Yes.
But yeah, he did some things that were really important for Denver getting as far as they did.
I'll tell you what, my friend, it's been a great conversation as always. I look forward to having you on the show again. And of course, we're probably going to be meeting up right around draft time, because Rafael Barlow is going to have another live draft. So we got to have you there. You and your brother.
For sure. And then, yeah, if you wanted to talk more about the draft, I listened to the NBA Draft Junkies where you threw out your lottery mock draft.
James Wiseman. My gosh, the internet has not really just.
I know. Yeah. Hey, I heard it, Gerald. And,
I know you heard it. I know you heard it.
Raph could have at least thrown in there like the first time you said it, but
yeah, I know. I was just.
you just let you go on.
I spaced. Raphael didn't catch it.
All good.
But that is all my bad. All my bad.
Hey, and it was. I'd be interested to, talk more draft with you and get into that. And the really exciting thing coming up for me this weekend is I'm finally heading back into the gym. We're doing the Hoop Scene West preview powered by Perspective Insight. And it is going to be a great event with top players from classes of 2021, 2022, 2023, getting even some 2024 guys. I saw a 2025 guy there. I'm guessing he must be really good to be amongst the group that we have. A lot of players from top prep school in Utah called Wasatch Academy. I think the headliner is Nolan Hickman. He's committed to University of Kentucky. But just had another high major guy enter the camp today. And a lot of intriguing players, some I've never seen before. So I'm very excited for this camp and to be back in the gym, taking all the safety precautions possible and just kind of getting into this new normal that is basketball in the time of COVID.
I'm looking forward to it as well, as far as for what you're doing, your future. Obviously, you're doing some great things. Yes, I definitely want to get you back on very soon talking NBA draft when more things clear up. And then obviously, as we get closer to it, your insight into that, your just sensational shows that you do with your brother on Viseland. Keep it going. I know hopefully that you two will be able to go ahead and connect even more in the future, because you guys are a great link when you guys go ahead and just face off against each other and guys differ on your opinions and whatnot. It's always a great listen, but it is Viseland. You're doing a great job there. Keep it going with that. Check out his work with the Perspective Insight and so much more. Mike, I tell you what, it's been a great time having you. And any last thoughts on the way out, my friend, as a fellow Lakers fan and LeBron fan?
I just want to say, go Lakers. You did a great job covering the playoffs, and I think that was fantastic. And just the passion and the work that you put into it. Thank you as always for having me on. And please subscribe and share the Viseland podcast, Viseland, and follow me at NBA Draft Mikey V on Twitter. Follow my brother at Jay Visenberg. He's my co-host as well for Viseland. And then follow at Pro Insight. And just and at Viseland too, if you want to see all the latest stuff happen with the Visenberg brothers.
Absolutely. And you'll never regret it when you go ahead and follow at NBA Draft Mikey V, because he puts out a ton of stuff. He retweets a ton of stuff that's great for the basketball fan out there. So
I'm just trying to push the community. I want to link people together.
Absolutely. And you do that, and you do just that. So I will tell you what, it's always great talking to you. I want to get more insight from you here very soon on the NBA draft once we get a little bit more things cleared up as far as what might be happening. Hopefully you'll hear a little bit more in the way of rumors now that the season's over. The dust has kind of been settled. There is no second bubble with the teams. I don't even know why they were talking about that.
Oh, the Delete 8? Yeah,
yes.
I just didn't think that was going to work.
Well, I don't think the NBA had really any real thoughts on it. I think it was just kind of just out there as far as the smoke screen is concerned, but they realized it's all about the money, my friend.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, Mikey, it's been great having you on the show. I look forward to bringing you on real soon. Fellow Laker fan, fellow LeBron fan, it's always good to have you here as far as one of our first shows right after the Lakers winning the World Championship. Where it goes from here, we're not sure yet, but we hope it leads to another World Championship right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.